Hey, what's up guys? I'm Dr. Evan Horschig, and today I'm gonna show you my top 5 hip mobility exercises for a perfect squat.
Get up and get down, get up and get.
Okay, so you get to the gym and it's time to warm up and you've got some really stiff hips. Let's talk about my top 5 hip mobility exercises to perfect your squat. Step 1, find a box. We're gonna do the pigeon stretch. Now, all you're gonna need for this is a box about this high. You can do it on a lower bench, but if you have options to get on a higher box, it's going to be a little bit more helpful. What you're gonna do is get your foot into this position, your lower leg into this externally rotated position. You're gonna get your leg into a good extended position on the back side. Push down on the knee, and from here, you are going to lean into the stretch, and you should feel a great stretch on this outside. And this is a great hip opener. We're producing hip external rotation at this area while also making sure that we're getting a good extended hip position on our backside. We're leaning into the stretch and then back out. You can also take your belly button and point it a couple different ways and see if that's able to hit maybe your individual restrictions. So let's go here, lean into the thigh. That brings out a pretty good stretch for me and my glutes on this right side. And then we can also do the same thing to this side. Belly button to heel, good back position, and back. Something you can also do right here is a contract, relax. Try to open the hips up a little bit more and create that neurological response to allow for a little bit more opening fluid movement. So you're gonna be here, you're gonna push as hard as you can. I'm driving my knee down into the box, and then I'm relaxing and then going into a little bit more of a stretch. Okay, so you can do back like that. The big thing I do not want to see is this, is rounding that upper back when you get there and going weak on that back leg. That's not helping us improve our mobility in a way that's gonna carry over to our barbell lifting technique. We want that back to be nice and braced, and we are only moving and creating movement at the hip joint. I don't ever wanna see that back collapse because we don't wanna see that in any of our barbell lifts. So we wanna mobilize in a position that is going to help carry over to efficiency in our technique. So again, this is the pigeon stretch up on a box like this. Now, for some people, you don't have very good mobility of your hips, and when you do that, you get a lot of pain in that outside part of your hip. How do you modify it? We're just going to go down to a box. You can do this sitting in a chair as well. From here, you're gonna sit down. We're gonna take that leg and you can pull it up into this position. And from here, you're gonna do the exact same movement. So chest is tall. We're then going to drop down like this. And again, I'm feeling a very good stretch in my hip. You can play around with the position of your leg as well if you want to go completely flat or you have the ability to go completely flat in this. Set that core tall, move only about the hips. Don't allow that back to collapse like this. And again, we're maybe holding this for about 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and back up. And again, we're doing this on both sides. Let's say this brings out a little bit of knee pain on this side. What do? I'm gonna bring that up and then down. So that can create a little bit of a better stretch for some people in the hip joint with less irritation, compression on that outside part of the knee. So that's our modification for the pigeon stretch. So that is stretch number 2. Let's go to stretch number 3. Let's get a good goblet squat. This is something that I've shown before. You're just gonna pick up a weight. I love using just a 10-kilo plate when I'm at the Olympic lifting gym. Today we're at KC weightlifting. You can also just use a 25-pound plate, dumbbell, kettlebell, anything that's gonna help offset your body weight. Set your feet in your same squat stance. For me, I have a fairly narrow squat stance, so I want those feet to be in a good position, and then I'm gonna squat all the way down. The weight is offsetting my body weight, so it allows me to squat just a little bit deeper and still keep a good upright chest. When I'm still feeling a little stiff, this is maybe for some people a little tough to get into first thing in the morning when they walk into the gym. So from here, we're just sitting down here in this position. You can sort of shift side to side. You can get those ankles while you're here, but the big thing for the hips, what I want you to do is not only sit down here for a couple seconds, but I want you to do a little bit of contract, relax. That's really gonna help get those glutes turned on and also open up those hips. So from here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna come up just a couple seconds. Watch this. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sink back down. You can open the hips and back up, and then let's do another contract, relax. So we're gonna come here, We're gonna contract, come up just a few inches and hold for a couple seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Squeeze my glutes as hard as I can, sink back down. And again, once I sink back down, I feel like I'm able to open my hips just a little bit more, sink with my hips a little bit lower towards my heels. And again, let's open those hips up side to side. So this is a great one to do every single time. This is the Goblet Squat stretch. So maybe a minute or two on that, stand back up, drop the weight. You should feel like you're able to get into a little bit of a deeper squat afterwards. So that is stretch number 3. Let's come over here. Let's talk about how we can affect the hip capsule. So if you look deep inside your hip, it's a ball in socket joint. So you have the end of your femur that is shaped like a ball. And your acetabulum, or your hip socket, is shaped in this position, and it fits deep inside like that. And surrounding that is some really tough tissue called your hip capsule, and that allows everything to be very stable inside the joint. Well, if you have developed some stiffness in that area, it can limit your ability to open those hips up and freely move those hips like you need to in order to get into a very deep squat, good receiving position for your clean and snatch. We can affect that mobility with banded joint mobilizations. Now they need to be a very, very thick band. Here's a monster band by Rogue Fitness, and I'll have a link to these in the very bottom of this YouTube video description. But the first way we're gonna work on is hip external rotation, getting those hips open. You're gonna get that band really high into your hip. We're gonna come out to the side and get into a lunge position. Now from here, this band is pulling laterally, so we're getting a little bit of lateral distraction on the hip joint itself. We're gonna get down into this position, and from here, we're just gonna move that hip in and out. Now, if someone has a hip impingement, as you get down into a deep squat, you feel a pinch or block sensation in the front side of your hip. This can be very helpful for some people at alleviating some of that sensation and allowing that hip joint to move a little bit better. But from here, we're just going side to side. And again, a little bit of contract, relax, PNF. Let's push out, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze those lateral glutes, and then relax and allow your body to move a little bit more free. Usually something like this, I'm moving in and out maybe 20 times. And then I'm, again, checking to see how I feel after. Usually I like to be in a good lunge position like this for the lateral banded joint mobilization. Another fun way to improve hip mobility is with internal rotation with the band. Now, what is internal rotation? If we sit down and we move our hips, external rotation is the ability to move the hip this way, whereas internal rotation moves the hip that way. And as you can see, I do not have a lot of hip internal rotation today because of how stiff my hips are and just the way my anatomy is built. You need internal rotation of the hips in order to set your feet in a fairly straightforward position in order to squat deep. If you do not have enough internal rotation in your hips, your toes will spin out to the side as you go down. Now, how do we improve hip internal rotation? You're gonna take that band and get it up into that very high position. You're gonna get down on the ground into what we would call a quadruped or all fours position. Now from here, you're going to prop your foot out to the side a little bit. Watch that one more time. We are internally rotating at the hip. Now from here, you're just gonna sit down and then go back and forth. See how I'm leaning in and out of this stretch. So I have a lateral, maybe a little bit of a posterior pull on the hip joint, and I'm rotating in and out. And then you can every once in a while prop that foot out a little bit more into a little bit more hip internal rotation, back and forth, prop that foot out a little bit more, back and forth. And I'm feeling a pretty good stretch deep inside the joint. This is not creating that pinch sensation at all. I'm going back and forth. And you can even do this in a very posterior pull as well. So I can go straight posterior on the joint. I'm in a flexed position, weight bearing. My knees driven into the ground. So this is gonna be similar to the position requirements for a deep squat. So knee is into the ground. I'm driving my foot out to the side. I'm going straight back, a little bit in and out. Hold for a couple seconds. You're basically gonna be searching out spots that may feel a little stiff. But let's always test, retest. Watch how much internal rotation I now have because of that. So from right here, you can see how much more, it's not a lot more, but it's a lot more ability to internally rotate that hip after performing that. Now, last one for today, This is our 5th exercise. This is called a Tippy bird or hip airplane. And we're gonna do this as an active stretch. So this is not necessarily your static stretch like laying on your back, pulling your hamstrings to your head. What we're gonna do is you're going to find a rig. You're going to get into a single leg RDL bottom position. And then from there, you're gonna rotate your body up and down, steering your strength, as Dr. McGill would say, of your hip. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get into that bottom position. So like we're doing a single leg RDL, you can use your hand for a little balance assistance if you need to, but we're gonna drop down, take my belly button and point it towards the wall, and I'm bringing out a good stretch in my lateral hip, and then I'm gonna rotate open. So I'm rotating up and over my hip in a flexed position, feeling a good stretch on the lateral part of my hip right here, maybe holding for a couple seconds, and then back up. So if you think about it, what motions am I going through right here? As I go over, I'm going into hip flexion. This is what's needed to get into a good deep squat. From right here, as I drop down, I'm internally rotating that hip. Feeling a really good stretch on the outside part of the hip. And then as I come up, I'm externally rotating a little bit with that hip and back down. Now, something like this, eventually you can progress to doing it without any balance assistance. Let's see what this looks like. This can be a pretty difficult exercise to do at first, but you're gonna be here, back leg completely straight. Go over, hold for a couple seconds, rotate up, rotate down, back up to neutral, and back up. Feel for when you are rotating up, you're feeling that lateral hip turning on to move yourself up. And when you go down, that lateral hip should be stretched a little bit. Let's do that on my left side. From here, back leg straight, going over. You can put your hands out to the side a little bit. Rotate down. Feel a good stretch in that left lateral hip. Rotate up. Don't let that foot wobble around. Back to neutral, and then stand back up. Now once again, I did a couple of those on my right side. Let's see how much more internal rotation I have. Again, maybe a little bit more on that side. Not a lot, just because of the way that my body's built. But let's see what that deep squat looks like again. So from here, squat all the way down. Feels like a good stretch in that bottom position. So that is the top 5 hip mobility exercises for a great looking squat. I hope you guys liked today's YouTube video. If you did, let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel, share the video with your friends, and let me know in the comment section if there's anything else that you would like to learn about in future videos. Until next time, guys, happy squatting.
They say that energy flows where attention goes, so I pay no mind. Why waste my time with all these negative cats scratching? So caught up in their egos, these people have lost.